Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go pack go. Ain't show with no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will.
Evening, welcome into Lombardi's Legends podcast. I am Wags, and joining me is Dane. And we are here on a Monday evening, Victory Monday again, Dane, as the Packers pull off a big fourth quarter comeback against the New Orleans Saints. And what a wild roller coaster of a ride that was, Dane. But the Packers are able to get the victory, move to 2-1 on the season. So we're going to get into that tonight. But we're also going to look ahead. The Packers have a short week this week, so just one podcast here, doing both the recap and a look ahead to the Lions coming to Lambeau Field for Thursday night football. So, Dane, how are you doing this evening, first of all?
Wags, I'm doing great, man. Happy Monday. Packers win, feeling great. Couldn't be more happy about how things turned out. There's things that need to be cleaned up, of course, but I'll tell you what, anytime the Packers can get a W, Jordan Love's first game as a starting quarterback, Lambeau Field, took care of business when we needed him to do it most. He got a huge ovation going into the game when he got announced, and then all he did was put on an absolutely legendary performance to start his career as a starting quarterback. So I couldn't be happier, and it's pretty crazy, man. We're sitting here celebrating an awesome W, and all of a sudden the Lions, we're going to turn around and have the Lions in just a few short days. So I think that it makes sense tonight, folks. We're going to talk a little bit about what we saw and Sunday, and then we're going to transition and talk about the Detroit Lions a little bit and what we're expecting and short turnaround at Lambeau Field on Thursday. So buckle up. It's going to be a action-packed podcast here tonight, but so excited to be on with you, Wags, as always.
Yeah, and for those of you that are joining us live, we are on Instagram Live as well as on our Facebook, Twitter, X, and YouTube channels live. So if you have any comments, if you're fired up after that performance on IG, we've got Captain Colby Jack joining us, Go Pack Go from Ontario, California. Thanks so much for joining us. Go Pack Go. We've got Nose Villa 615, Go Pack Go. So go ahead and put in any questions, comments you have in any of those live channels, and we'll certainly try to get to them throughout the show. But Dane, first of all, let's just dive right into this. Is what I'm just going to call a gutsy performance. When's the last time you've seen one? Well, if you count special teams, two units of the Packers struggle so mightily for 3 quarters and somehow just battle and just, pull everything together and make a comeback like that. Normally the comebacks are, one, maybe the defense is struggling, but the offense is on fire, or vice versa. But defense held their own for the most part for all 4 quarters, especially tightened it up in the second half. But as much as the offense and special teams were struggling through 3 quarters, it just didn't look good. So this was a different type of comeback performance than I think we've seen in a long time from a Packers team.
Yeah, I can't even remember the last time we've seen a performance quite like this from a Green Bay Packers team. And coming off the heels of a gut-wrenching loss down in Atlanta, too. That's the other piece of this, looking at it, the big picture, right? I'm thinking about, we blow this 12-point lead down in Atlanta in week 2 and then come out flat, making a ton of mistakes. There's penalties. There's a lot of errors early in the game yesterday. And then in the fourth quarter, something that I don't know if I quite could have fathomed, Wags, to start the year. We were high on Jordan Love. We had high expectations of Jordan. We're on the record as saying that we were excited that he was going to be the quarterback this year. I didn't quite expect Jordan Love in his first start at Lambeau, his third start, true start as the starting quarterback of the Packers, to put the team on his back in the fourth quarter with his legs, with his arm, and make some ridiculous plays the way that he did it. And he did it. And it wasn't a perfect game from Jordan. There were some errors in the first 3 quarters, but man, in that fourth quarter, he was electric. He wouldn't be shaken. And Wags, he showed it with his legs. He showed it with his vision yet again, and some huge throws in major pressure-filled situations. I mean, I think about there's a two-play series, Wags. There's a two-play series, the touchdown and the two-point conversion. The first one, it's Demario Davis, who's an all-pro inside linebacker, right, for New Orleans. We talked about him on the preview. He's a beast. He's a tackle machine. And Jordan Love on that option play, kind of that read option play, faked it to Patrick Taylor on fourth down, and he's able to shimmy Davis off and lands in the end zone for that touchdown. And he told everybody, hey, I'm going to do a Lambeau leap if I rush one in. And guess what? He had the presence of mind. This is classic Jordan Love already. He stayed calm. He stayed composed. He was jacked, celebrated with his boys, but he got everybody back in the huddle. Next play, Wags, the pocket breaks down. It looks like all hell's about to break loose. And Jordan makes maybe the best throw of his young professional career. He steps up in the pocket across the field, crosses body against Lattimore, the best corner, the best defensive back on New Orleans, and finds Samori Torrey for that two-point conversion. Gutsy call by Matt LaFleur to go for two, puts the Packers within 6. An incredible execution by Jordan Love on a play that was clearly breaking down. And that when that happened, Wags, that's when I just to myself was like, he's arrived, win or lose. That was a hell of a back-to-back play series. He looked so in the element, under pressure in that moment. So how exciting was that? And of course, the final drive was just masterful. But wow, what a gutsy performance from Jordan Love in front of the home crowd in his first performance there like that. It was magical. It really was.
Yeah, and I think gutsy is definitely the right word for it, because he missed a lot of throws, but he was not going to stay down. And so that's why that's the perfect adjective for this performance. So there's certainly plenty to improve upon, but he came up big when it mattered. And I think the poise that we continue to see from Jordan Love, the leadership that we continue to see, and only his fourth NFL start is pretty great to see in terms of that progression. Those other things are going to come, especially without some of the main guys that they had out with this game for the second week in a row. So, Dane, going back to that 2-point conversion call, and we're kind of jumping around a little bit here in the recap, but what was your initial reaction to that call by Coach LaFleur? Because I have to admit, I haven't seen that. I think too much in other games. Certainly, it makes sense to go for two in situations when you're coming from behind, but that normally you don't. I don't know that we've really seen teams do that. I saw the analytics later, but my initial reaction was, oh, this is interesting. I didn't hate it in the moment, but I said, oh, this is interesting. Didn't quite understand it. Did get the idea that, hey, they've got to go down, hold them and score another touchdown either way. So why not? But certainly it was a momentum shifting moment, I think, to convert the 2-point play there. Not only a great off schedule throw from Jordan Love, as you highlighted so well, but to cut that game to 6, it just felt a little bit different in that moment. So I'm kind of curious what your reactions were when that call was made, and then throughout that process, and kind of what your mentality was after they did convert it to cut it to 6.
Well, it's trust, right? I mean, talk about the trust Matt LaFleur has in that offense at that moment. And you mentioned some of the guys that are down. If you're listening to this pod, I don't have to mention it, but I'm going to. Bakhtiari's out. Elton Jenkins is out. Aaron Jones is out. Christian Watson's out, right? I mean, don't even have to mention Jair Alexander on the defense, but all those offensive pieces. I mean, I saw that a little over 50% of the cap space the Packers have was either out or, injured or on another team at this point for this game. So it's just remarkable that Matt LaFleur in that moment gave the keys to the car to this young offense. And he gave the keys to the car to Jordan Love in that moment, for better or worse, and it worked out. I mean, and talk about the confidence builder there. You can't tell me that these guys now aren't hyped, that they have that kind of trust from the coaching staff. For them in that moment, They're down. He feels down and out a little bit, and they get that touchdown on 4th down. They go for it. They have to go for it. And in that, even in that moment, Wags, they put the ball in Jordan's hands on 4th down. Completely in his hands. It was his option. Is he going to hand the ball off? Is he going to run that ball, take it himself, right? And then for that 2-point conversion, not only to do it in that moment, but to trust in a young quarterback to stay as composed as he was able to do, and then make that play. You're right. You don't see it happen even with great quarterbacks that have done it for years and years and years. So for Matt LaFleur to do that, actions speak louder than words in everything in life. And the action to put that responsibility in the hands of this young offense speaks volumes of what they think that this offense is capable of. And LaFleur and the coaching staff was rewarded in spades, not only with that play, but, going forward the rest of the game. And wouldn't you know it, Wags, they got aggressive and they came out with a victory in just a remarkable fashion. But I liked it. I was nervous, but I liked it. And when it happened, and of course after it happened, man, I liked it even more. But I love LaFleur's the chutzpah that he had to say, let's go out and try to win this thing. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think not only with Love a gutsy performance, but some of the other players on the offensive side of the ball, just looking at some of the receivers, Jaden Reed had kind of a tough day. I had some really tough potential catches, maybe a couple of them you'd like to see him be able to secure and pull down. Not the easiest catches, but makes just a huge diving catch in that last drive, as you mentioned, just magical. Romeo Doubs had 12 targets, wasn't able to connect maybe as efficiently as what they would like. When you look at stat line, 5 catches, 73 yards and touchdown, looks pretty good. But 12 targets, you'd like to see a few more of those connect, certainly, but made some just big time catches in that last series, capped off by the touchdown on that back shoulder throw. Just a beautiful throw from Love, but a fantastic catch by Doubs as well. Those are not easy plays to execute, but those guys came up with some huge plays as well to help their young quarterback when it mattered the most. So I just want to highlight that. I thought Luke Musgrave, just as a receiver, finally got a few more targets this week, and he's going to continue to get more and more because the dude is open all over the field. When he gets open that often, it's just hard not to keep throwing him the ball. So I think these guys are going to get more and more opportunities, and certainly you hope Christian Watson and Aaron Jones can get healthy and play and return here soon, because that's going to certainly change the dynamic of the offense as well. But it's just fantastic to see those guys, and Dontavian Wicks as well. Made some great catches, 6 targets yesterday, and was able to pull in 4 receptions as well. So I just want to highlight that those guys, certainly I think it's right there. You can see that. And I made the comment in our Packer chat this morning that Jaden Reed, Luke Musgrave, I truly believe both of those guys could have a game or two this season where you're looking at an 8+ catch, 100-yard type performance. And because they're just their ability to be able to separate and find spots on the field is so evident in ways, with all respect to some of the receivers we've had here the last couple of years, it just didn't seem to be happening with as great a frequency. With the exception of a Devontae Adams, but it's not really across the board. We haven't seen as much of that, and certainly Doubs in year 2 continues to develop that, and Christian Watson, when he comes back, I would expect to, obviously we'll have that separation ability as well. So exciting stuff from the offense. Lots of things to still learn from. It's not pretty. I don't want to sit here and be all rose colored when you don't score any points through 3 quarters. There's some negatives there as well. But certainly we can focus more on the positives based on the outcome and how they were able to finish down the stretch.
Yeah, you mentioned Octavius Wicks, something that never shows up in the box score, but another big pass interference on him downfield. Got huge chunk yards because he's a burner. So he's a guy who's just becoming somebody before our eyes as a very young wide receiver. So excited to see that develop and continue to happen. He seems to have a little bit of mustard with Jordan Love, right? There's some kind of flow there. They like each other. There's some good chemistry there. You mentioned Jaden Reed. Yeah, a couple drops, but Wags, you're right. This is your guy, and he's a guy. He can play ball, great chemistry with Jordan Love. A couple other guys that I just want to mention looking at my notes.
Dan, just before we dive into that, I think one thing that maybe we should do is let's talk about the offensive line and the run game with respect to the Detroit preview. I think we can kind of just look back a little bit and look and make that part of our look ahead. So I'm guessing that's kind of the direction you were about to go, but just in the interest of time, let's kind of move that in that direction. Why don't we head over to the defensive side of the ball? And this was an interesting performance. I know nationally the story and maybe from the Saints is a little bit Derek Carr goes out and the Saints aren't able to score any more points. But the reality is they had only put 10 points up on the board. One of those touchdowns was aided by a short field. The Packers going for it on 4th down and really botched that play pretty badly. That's the type of play I'd rather see them try on 1st, 2nd, or 3rd down, frankly, than a 4th down situation. But that's neither here nor there. And I don't know. I thought the defense did their part and bounced back really well, tackled a lot better in this game than they did the prior week against the Falcons, which is always going to help. The Saints have some guys. Olave got loose for a couple of catches, but I thought they held him contained really well. And say what you will again about Jameis Winston. The guy's played a lot of games in the league. He can sling it. So there was nothing that the Saints, I think, really changed all that much when Derek Carr went down. It certainly isn't going to help them to lose Derek Carr, but frankly, I thought the defense looked pretty solid all day. And how about Rashawn Gary coming in 23 snaps is able to put up 3 sacks and have the type of performance he did. When you're getting performances like that, that certainly takes a lot of pressure off the rest of the defense, doesn't it, Dane?
Absolutely. Rashawn Gary got emotional after the game. We saw him in the locker room, and I don't blame him. You talk about a comeback. Somebody who 10 months ago tears his ACL. We've seen ACL injuries, any position group. It's a nasty injury. It's not what it was 20 years ago, but man, it's a tough one to come back from. The rehab, all the effort, all the work that has to go in, and a little bit of luck too. And to watch Rashawn Gary, nobody maximizes the God-given ability the way Rashawn Gary does. He's as hardworking of a guy. We put it on social media. We've watched 40 years of Packer football. You and I, 80 if you total it separately. And I'm not sure if I've ever seen a more passionate player than Rashawn Gary. He loves the game. He loves the team. He's a leader. He talks, but he also just goes out and does his job too. He's this phenomenal balance as an athlete, as a player. Came into Green Bay, right, as somebody that a lot of folks were looking sideways at. Oh, they drafted him, and all he's done is go out and just prove everybody wrong that doubted him, right? And it's so fun to watch him get out there. 3 sacks, Wags, on a limited snap count. We're talking, 23, 24 snaps yesterday. Hit the quarterback a ton. 3 sacks. Maybe had a forced fumble in there as well that got re-recovered by the Saints. But he was a wrecking ball. He always is when he's out there. And after the game, got a game ball, well deserved. But I mean, talk about leading not only verbally but also by example. That's the kind of Matt LaFleur said it yesterday after the game. He said, that's the kind of guy you want to go to war with. And I couldn't agree more. I'm so proud of Rashawn. I'm so excited for him to be building off of this. It's a contract year for him. And it's just awesome to see somebody like him, going out, putting in the work, and you're seeing the results come out of that. So, I mean, what more can you say other than, man, Rashawn Gary's back, and it's awesome to see it. He's the difference maker, I think, on this defense week in and week out. And he was a wrecking ball yesterday against the Saints all game, but especially in that fourth quarter, it's like he just cranked it up another notch and was just sniffing Jameis Winston when we needed him most. It was great to see.
Yeah, for sure. And then this defensive front, and we lost Devondre Campbell in this game as well with an ankle injury.
First quarter.
Yeah. It was not the same ankle as he twisted in camp. So now he's got two bum ankles. So I would be surprised if we see him Thursday. But yeah. So, but the defensive line, I thought really plugged those holes. The Saints only averaged 3.5 yards per carry on the ground. And I know that they didn't have Jamal Williams. They're still without Kamara, who's coming off a suspension. So I understand that. But this, as a whole, there just wasn't a lot of openings there for those running backs. Miller, the rookies coming in with fresh legs. Sometimes you can get burned in those situations. And the Packers were able to contain him, and Tony Jones. Taysom Hill didn't come in any gadget plays and really hurt us at all for the most part. So just a really solid performance up front. And hopefully that's something to build on. I know this wasn't a super dangerous Saints offense, obviously, and their run game is kind of where they want to have their bread buttered, though. So I just think it was something to build off of, and certainly we got to come with the same attitude and the same aggression and the same overall performance from those guys up front. Week in and week out. So it starts this week in against Detroit, but certainly encouraging, Dane, to see us bounce back and not get steamrolled like we did against the Falcons.
Yeah, and what do you make of Rudy Ford? I mean, I thought maybe the best, most complete game we've seen Rudy Ford as a starting safety for the Packers. Maybe not as flashy as those interception games, but as far as just solid football, he led the team in tackles, but more than that, he was just around the ball a ton. Played the lanes really well, played the pass extremely well, had a nice pass breakup at one point. I just really liked the game that he had. And Darnell Savage Jr. Wags, when we needed him, he had a huge special teams tackle. He was flying around yesterday, very aggressive yesterday. So, got to give a shout out to both of those guys. But I was really impressed by Rudy Ford's play. That by far, I think the best game he's played. Really sound tackling the ball as well. So shout out to him. Really good game there. And you mentioned Devondre Campbell, Isaiah McDuffie coming in to kind of pinch hit in the inside next to Quay Walker a number of times. And I thought that he really acclimated himself well. I didn't see any missed tackles from Isaiah. So, shout out to some of these guys stepping up. It's a next man up mentality, right? And it's cool to see that. And Corey Ballantyne as well on the practice squad ends up playing. We're down to 3 corners yesterday in the fourth quarter. At any point, those guys can get torched. And I thought Ballantyne largely played a pretty good football in that base D. He came up to play special teams and come in an emergency. He ended up playing in an emergency, some very critical snaps, so shout out to these guys. And you've shout out to Rasul Douglas a ton this year, Wags. And I thought he had another really fine performance overall, played a really nice game. So, this defense, as maligned as they are, we need to give them love when they play really good game. And, it wasn't perfect again. There were some penalties, there's some stuff, but, anytime you can hold an NFL offense to, single digit more or less, that's pretty damn good. So I thought a lot of guys individually had some pretty nice performances yesterday.
Yeah, and good news on Carrington Valentine. Coach LaFleur confirmed that he did not tear his bicep or pectoral muscle.
I didn't see that. That's awesome.
So it looked like that could have been a serious injury. Now, he didn't say that he may not miss some time, but certainly it seems like it's good news on him. And yeah, Dane, you get 30 snaps from Corey Ballantyne on defense. That's not certainly something that you're expecting, but with Jair got down and then Valentine getting hurt, he stepped in and had to perform. And frankly, I didn't hear his name or his number a lot, and that's usually a good sign when you're playing a cornerback position. You have to step in like that. So I haven't gotten into the all 22 on Valentine's performance yet. So I'm sure there's some things, but he wasn't getting picked on or isolated. So certainly he did his job and came in, and that next man up mentality was so important as we saw yesterday. So Dane, any other thoughts on defense? I do want to just touch a little bit on some of the issues we had on special teams, if you don't mind, unless you had anything else on
No,
defense.
please. Yeah. Yeah. What did you see particularly on that punt return touchdown? A pretty significant breakdown there. That could have cost the Packers the game, even though it happened early. I mean, that's where the Saints got a lot of their points. So, what did you make of that? Where do you see the breakdown happening there?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna paraphrase Coach Bisaccia, and he basically said, punting into the wind just didn't get enough hang time under that. It didn't look like Waylon had a clean foot on the ball, so it didn't get to he didn't get the placement nor the hang time that I think that they would have wanted on that one. And then there just wasn't enough lane discipline. And so we had some different guys on special teams on punt coverage and kick coverage yesterday, based on some of the call-ups that we had, some of the guys that we had out. So I don't know if that played a factor. I don't think Coach Bisaccia is going to make any excuses when it comes to that. We've got to be clean when it comes to those the lane integrity, and that's the biggest thing, regardless of how well you hit the punt or a kick. If it was a kick as well, you've got to maintain lane integrity and ensure that you squeeze down so that they're not able to get a clean run, especially right up the middle of the field on a punt return. That's what I think was a little bit discouraging about that. But that was not a great performance, not just in terms of the punt return that we gave up, but 3 penalties in returns as well for the Packers on holds. So those are things that can really kill you, not just on the scoreboard, but when we're talking about the holds, that really affected some of the field position. That the first punt of the game, they had a hold, and they would have had the ball right around midfield for that first possession. Those are the things that can really hurt. And the Packers as a whole need to really focus on cleaning up some of the number of penalties that they've had in the first 3 weeks of the season. Luckily, they've been able to hold on to the football and haven't been turning it over. But if you have that many penalties and you start coughing up the football a little bit as well, those are going to be tough things to overcome in any game. So hopefully those are some things that we can clean up on the special team side as well.
Yeah, and maybe transitioning over, penalties against the Saints are one thing. Penalties against the Detroit Lions will be a much different thing. And Wags, looking ahead maybe to Thursday night now a little bit. Short week. I feel like Thursday night games traditionally are a little sloppier, unfortunately, than your regular games for a number of reasons. But diving into this matchup with Detroit Lions, I gotta know, man, like, what are you seeing? Maybe looking at this Detroit Lions offense, that's a good starting point. Jared Goff has found a second home, right? He's found maybe his home, and he's playing some pretty good football for the Lions. He's not great, but damn, he's good enough right now for them. He's been able to get the ball and he's finding his weapon. So who do you think the Packers really need to be zeroing in on? And what do you think the game plan should be going into this week with this Packers defense coming off this victory?
Yeah, it might sound crazy, but I think it's Jahmyr Gibbs is where it starts. And the reason I say that, Dane, is I just don't have a lot of faith in our game planning to slow down run games. And I think that's where Detroit has hurt us in the last 3 matchups. Let's not forget, Detroit's won 3 straight against the Packers. I don't want this to continue. So we have to really avoid Detroit being able to establish short down and distance situations, because Jared Goff is the type of quarterback that I know gets maligned a little bit as a passer. However, he's got a ton of weapons, and this is a really good offense for Detroit, and they protect him extremely well. They've only given up 3 sacks so far this season. And so if they're able to get into situations where when it is third down, it's only 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 4. It's going to be really tough for the Packers, I think, in their base defense to get pressure on Jared Goff. And that's what we need to do in order to get an advantage in this game. That's where Jared Goff, he's not a terrible athlete. He can move around a little bit, but in terms of his legs, he's again not one of those guys. We talked about Desmond Ritter a couple of weeks ago. He can extend plays, but he's not going to be someone that's going to be tucking and trying to run a lot unless there's just the Packers are playing a lot of man and there's a lot of room in front of them. But the thing is that Jared Goff also is not the type of quarterback that you can allow to just sit back and get comfortable. That's what they've done in some of these past few matchups. Last season, first matchup against Detroit, he really lit us up in the first half because he wasn't getting touched. He wasn't even getting breathed on in that matchup. And so this Packers front has been doing a great job of getting after the quarterback and pressuring the quarterback. But much like that matchup against the Falcons 2 weeks ago, it's going to be a lot harder to do if we can't be stouter against the run on first and second down. So it might sound a little bit crazy because of some of the other weapons that Detroit has. Ross St. Brown. They've got some other guys. I think Laporta, the rookie tight end, has been flashing and looking really good in the pass game as well. So he's someone that is certainly going to be in the game plan for the Packers defensively. But it's just going to be really incumbent on them to be able to put together the type of performance that they just had against the Saints in the run game. And that's going to allow more opportunities to be able to put pressure on Jared Goff if he has some longer third down situations and we're able to pin back a little bit and have more time to get upfield and put some pressure on him. Because if he's got to be moving his feet around a lot, he's just not as accurate of a thrower. And you can say that about a lot of quarterbacks in this league, but we've seen enough of Jared Goff going back to his time with the Rams that's a situation that his level of performance can really go downhill in a hurry. But he's a pretty darn good quarterback if you give him time and you allow him to sit back there and be comfortable and pick apart this Packer defense.
Yeah, and Karsten in our Insta chats talking about Laporta as well. I mean, he kind of had a coming out party, right? University of Iowa seems to just produce good tight ends, right? I mean, that's what they do. Another good one. I fear that Detroit's got a real good one in him. You mentioned that some of the injuries and Devondre Campbell. I think I would agree, Wags. It's unlikely he's going to be able to go on such short notice with that ankle. So how do you see the Packers taking away somebody like a Laporta? Because that's who I'm circling actually as the offensive threat for Detroit. And yes, I mean, St. Brown is ridiculous and Gibbs is this young, freak talent, but Laporta, you talk about the quarterback being able to get the ball out of his hands quickly, right? And Laporta is kind of that guy who might be able to box guys out. So do you see Savage maybe getting a lot of work on here? Do you see Quay Walker getting some run against the linebacker? A little bit of everybody, a little bit of zone. I mean, how do you defend somebody that's so good? I mean, the Packers have done a better job, I think, over the last year or so against the tight end. I look back 3-4 years and I go, oh my God, every time a tight end came around, I was like, we're going to get torched. Hasn't been the case the last couple of years as much, but how do you defend somebody like Laporta, especially when you're missing one of your key inside linebackers?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Dane. It's not going to be one guy because we know the Packers like to be in their too high shell nickel look and play a lot of zone. So it's just going to be a matter of communication, chipping them, I think, at the first level, first of all. So whether that's Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, Van Ness, whoever's lined up on the outside where Laporta is, you want to be able to disrupt his routes. As a rookie, timing may be a little bit more of a challenge. So the problem is that it's easier said than done, because your first responsibility as an edge guy is to play the run, and so you kind of having to try to do it's a both and situation, but you can't let Laporta get free releases off the line of scrimmage. So I think that's the first thing, and then behind him, we've seen even Rasul Douglas get some tight end assignments. Frankly, I thought he had great coverage on Jimmy Graham. He had his hand in there. I still don't know how that ball got through there to get into the touchdown. So it's going to be a team effort in this one. The Lions love to really work the middle of the field. Amon-Ra St. Brown is another guy. And so that's the other challenge, is he has gravity. And I think that's part of why Laporta has been able to find himself open so often in the first 3 games this year. So now it's a little bit of you got to pick and choose when those guys are running rubs or off of each other, or crossers in the middle of the defense. It's not an easy decision, because you can't allow Amon-Ra St. Brown to run free either. So it's going to require a lot of communication. I think the Packers are going to have to get good depth at that second level with their linebacker core. And again, they're going to have to get pressure. This is not an easy task. This is a good Detroit offense. They're going to have to get pressures in some of those third down situations with their front 4 or 5, depending on how many they're lining up on the line of scrimmage in those third down situations. So it's not going to be easy, but we're going to have to be opportunistic, and hopefully we can just kind of keep them off of their routes a little bit initially. And even if they find themselves open, that can make the difference. If it's 3rd and 6, maybe their route settles in a yard or 2 short of the sticks, versus if they don't get shipped or they're able to get a free release, then all of a sudden they can then run their route beyond the sticks 7-8 yards deep, and it's an easy first down. So those are all the little things that can make a big difference in terms of executing, getting some stops, and hopefully winning some of those opportunities as well.
And the big guy who missed last week, or I guess yesterday, is Jair Alexander. Coming off of, I said, the worst game I've ever seen him play as a professional, had some back issues, in practice this past week, and he wasn't able to go. How precautionary do you think that was? And we'll talk about the offensive guys where a lot of the other guys were out, but do you expect Jair to go? I mean, backs are kind of finicky. They're kind of a tough thing, because what's your gut feeling? Because it's a totally different game plan, I think, if Jair's out there against St. Brown versus if he's not, especially with some of the injuries, particularly to Valentine. I mean, all of a sudden cornerback is becoming pretty darn thin until we get Stokes back as well. So, what do you make of that?
We don't really have any information. We don't have anything to work off of. We don't know when the back injury happened. He wasn't listed on the initial injury report on Wednesday last week. So did it happen in practice? Did he just, you can sleep wrong and your back can get racked up. So who knows? And that's the problem, is without information, I'm not sure I can make a prediction on that at this point, Dane. And we're also not going to get true practice injury reports this week. So that's kind of a toss up. That being said, certainly he's someone that, if he's going to go, to your point, is an obvious difference maker. And I'm sure he's chomping at the bit to have a bounce back performance, and as much of this defense was able to this week. I'm sure Jair Alexander on an individual level is really ready to have a bounce back performance. As you said, he did not have the best game against the Falcons. So hopefully he's able to go. I'm not a big fan of the idea, as you know, Dane, of, well, let's just hold him out because we've got a Thursday game. If he was healthy enough to play on Sunday, I think he would have played. And that goes for the rest of the guys that they held out to. I understand that's probably not the actual reality, but my feeling is players want to play games. Nobody is fully healthy in a vacuum. So we've got to get over the idea of, well, let's just wait until they're healthy and then they can play. There's only 17 games a year in the NFL. So if you're healthy, you play, period. Thursday night or not, that's a problem for another day. Now, could have they been on a pitch count yesterday if some of those guys played? Perhaps. We won't know because that didn't happen. So the fact that they did not play yesterday, and specifically, I guess, Jair Alexander, to me, doesn't necessarily give us a good indication that that's a bad sign in my mind. I don't view that as, well, maybe they're just holding him out and he can be healthy for Thursday. To me, that's, shoot, he wasn't healthy enough to play yesterday. He may not play Thursday. So I think we need to be prepared for that as more of the reality. Now, that being said, I did look ahead a little bit this morning at the schedule, and we've got a little bit of a schedule bye because we're playing on Thursday. So 9 games off because our next game is in Las Vegas on a Monday Night Football. So 9 games off after this one. And then after that Monday night game is the bye. So the Packers, after this game, are only playing 1 game in 22 days. So does that mean they're willing to risk running a guy out there that maybe isn't, quote unquote, 100%, even though nobody ever is really 100% once you start an NFL season? Or does that mean, well, why don't we just lean into this? They're not fully healthy. Let's give them an extra game off, and you're only missing 1 game in a 22-day period. Perhaps that's the way that they go. So it might be case by case with each of these guys, how they try to manage that. I don't think it's the same for all of them, or it's going to be a little bit of a different situation. But Dane, we certainly could use Jair Alexander out there any game, but certainly this week is a big game against a division rival, an opponent that is a very good offensive football team. So we need all our guys, and so hopefully he's ready to go. But I'm not super optimistic at this point. The fact that he didn't practice at all Thursday, Friday, and was held out of the game yesterday doesn't tell me that he's probably clearly going to be healthy for Thursday.
No, I appreciate that. And I don't disagree. I am a little more optimistic on the offensive side when we start talking about Aaron Jones. I felt like he was pretty darn close to going this last week. Wasn't able to go, but I have a feeling Aaron Jones is suiting up on Thursday night. And you know, can't come soon enough. He's a game changer. He's so dynamic on this offense. And I look at this Detroit Lions defense, Wags, and the Lions are a good football team collectively. This is a punch in the mouth kind of football team that the head coach of Detroit likes to put out there. But this feels like Aaron Jones is a mismatch against this Detroit Lions defense, point blank. I look at the inside linebackers. I look at Campbell, some of the guys that they have out there. You know, they've got some guys with some speed, but not the kind of speed like Aaron Jones has. So I think it's going to be critical out of everybody that's been out the last couple of weeks. If the Packers can get Aaron Jones back there, we've had trouble running the ball to start this season. But I think getting Aaron Jones out there could really be a huge remedy for this Packers offense. So that's something I'm really, really circling. And I'm just, you know, it's hard, so hard to predict, right? The Christian Watsons of the world. Bakhtiari, I'm done trying to predict David Bakhtiari. I have no idea when that man's going to go or not going to go anymore. But, you know, I'm just kind of curious. You know, do you think that out of all the guys that have been out the last couple weeks, Aaron Jones is the most critical to get back from a perspective, or you know, who are you trying to circle right now as you know, who's the guy that could make the biggest impact out of the guys that are hurt right now?
Well, Bakhtiari and Jenkins, because our run game has been struggling. So without those guys, I'm not sure how much room Aaron Jones is going to have. Now, may he be able to make more out of the holes and the opportunities than what we've been able to do the last few weeks? Yes, I in general, I think he can, just because he's that explosive. That said, this is a Detroit defense that is a top 5. I know it's early in the season, but top 5 defense against the run. They're coming off a week. They just held Bijan Robinson to 33 yards rushing and Tyler Algier to 12 yards rushing.
Imagine that.
So yeah, imagine that. They had a game plan that forced Desmond Ridder to throw the ball 36 times. The exact game plan that we talked about we wanted to see in that Falcons matchup. But again, that's still impressive, no matter how you slice it, that they were able to essentially not just hold those guys in check, but really shut them down. Tells me that this is a really, really stout Lions defense up front, and they've got some guys across the board that can get after the quarterback and the pass rush as well. When you're looking at their ability in that front to rush the passer, Aiden Hutchinson is the number 1 pick a couple years ago. Certainly is the guy that I think most Packer fans are going to be fully aware of. But across that whole front, every single one of those guys, even in the interior, has at least 1 sack already through 3 games. So they disperse it pretty well. They run some nice stunts. They play off of each other really well. Both rushing the passer, and then especially impressive has been how they've been able to hold up against the run game early in the season. So Aaron Jones, I think the bigger thing for me is his ability to be that release valve in the flat. That puts a lot of pressure on this Detroit defense. And we saw that week 1 against Chicago. Aaron Jones as a receiver can really, really open things up for this Packers offense. And Aaron Jones is someone that's going to be dynamic in that role. So I know Jordan Love has gotten the one thing that he seems to be getting a little bit of criticism for is his low completion rate. And I get it. I think he's been trying to make all the throws. So he's not dinking and dunking. The Packers aren't holding anything back from him. So I think that's going to improve. But it definitely improves when you've got a guy like Aaron Jones out there to be able to secure passes and take it and get 5, 6, 7 yards when you're just doing a little swing pass. So I think even just from that respect, if Bakhtiari is not able to go and Jenkins isn't going to play this week either, I think he's someone that frankly, they probably just didn't IR him because of the bye and maybe they're circling. Perhaps he's able to come back the game after their bye against the Vikings. So, they'll be playing the Broncos, but not to look too far ahead of ourselves. But yeah, Jones, he's someone that he's the best player on this Packers offense. So yes, he's someone that should be able to make a difference in terms of getting a rhythm. I'm not sure that he's going to rescue the run game this week. It'd be great to see if he can, but we're going to have to do some more things, I think, up front, particularly in the interior. So I know you wanted to highlight a couple of things on the offensive line as well. So maybe that's a good transition to that discussion. Just looking at the performances of the offensive line yesterday, as well as looking ahead to what that might look like this week against the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, so the other piece here, so we're already, the question marks with Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins very likely out. Zach Tom late in the game at right tackle also went down and was out the last few snaps, and Yosh Nijman was able to come in relief there. But if you ask me, I would argue Zach Tom, Elton Jenkins, and David Bakhtiari are the 3 best offensive linemen on this team. So all of a sudden we're down 3 major players on this offensive line if Zach Tom's unable to go. Right now, we have no idea what Zach Tom's, prognosis is, unless I missed something here today, but I don't think I have.
Dane, and I apologize to interrupt, but since you're mentioning him, that was one thing. Coach LaFleur said that he was feeling better today, and they're going to give him up to the game Thursday. So it sounds like he will be probably questionable or a game time decision, but it's at least encouraging enough that, and normally Coach LaFleur is not exactly transparent when it comes to injuries. So the fact that he came right out there and said that indicates to me that at least there's a pretty decent chance that he could go Thursday. So if nothing else, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a multiple week injury, at least from what we know at this point. But we've certainly seen how that can go in the other direction as well. But it seems to be somewhat encouraging, at least at this point.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome to hear. I mean, it's going to be critical to get some of these guys back. I'll tell you what though, Rasheed Walker, I thought on the left side played a really strong game. So you got to give some props to him. And I thought Josh Myers also, at least in the pass pro, played much better this week than he did last week. This Packer offensive line has struggled in the run game. There's make no bones about it. But in the pass game, largely speaking, they've been able to provide Jordan Love with enough time. And when the pocket has broken down, we've seen Jordan Love be able to use his legs and get outside and move the ball. But it's going to be critical for this offensive line to continue to keep Jordan upright. And you mentioned Wags, Jordan making all of the throws. I expect or attempting to. I expect him to continue to try to make these throws. I mean, he's somebody that I'm actually kind of surprised how much he's throwing the ball downfield. He's somebody that's really, really trying to stretch this defense with some of his playmakers, these young playmakers. And that's something that, looking at this Detroit defense, as good as they've been so far early in this year, I'm expecting some of these young guys and for Jordan to really try to put some pressure and some stress on the cornerbacks of Detroit, particularly Cameron Sutton and Jerry Jacobs. Fine cornerbacks, but I wouldn't argue they're world beaters by any chance or a stretch of the imagination. And whether Christian Watson is in or not, Dontavius Wicks has shown that he can stretch the field. Romeo Doubs has shown that he can make circus catches in big spots. And Jaden Reed's been Jaden Reed. But Wags, I think this is the week I am circling Luke Musgrave. Luke Musgrave against this Detroit Lions defense is the ultimate mismatch. Those guys are really good running downhill, tackling the ball carrier, but I'm not sure if they can stick with Musgraves for 4 quarters with that big body, stretching him out wide, moving him back in line. He's playing a huge amount of snaps. I think he played about 88% of the snaps on offense this past week. I expect that trend to continue, and that's who I'm really looking at, whether the offensive line's intact or not. Luke Musgrave is the guy I think this week that I really want to circle, because I think that he could have a big time game on national TV at Lambeau Field. I feel like we're seeing little pieces of Musgrave. He's catching the ball really fluidly. They've been able to get him out in space even on a couple of plays, but this is the week over the middle of the field. I think that Detroit can be a little bit vulnerable, and I expect Jordan Love to really try to stretch the field. We saw it this past week. Jordan Love missed on that seam route, right? He had Musgrave, missed on that throw. We'd be talking about a touchdown potentially from Musgrave, a big-time touchdown if Jordan was able to hit that play. I expect them to go back to the well on that one this week, and it's just a matter of time until Musgrave is helping stretch that field from the tight end position, because he does have that ability. And something tells me with this Detroit team, I've watched enough of them so far this season that I think that they're vulnerable up the middle in the pass game. Not in the run game so much, but in the pass game. So folks, circle Musgrave. I think he can do some real damage against Detroit on Thursday.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And frankly, I think Musgrave's proving to be a mismatch for pretty much anyone. And so he's going to continue to get more and more opportunities as we've been talking about. Dane, one thing that I'm curious about, and we don't want to talk too much longer on the offensive line, but if Tom is not able to go and we see Yosh Nijman, then I believe we'll see Caleb Jones get active for game day as the backup tackle. Could we also see Sean Ryan come in? And I know you and a lot of other Packer fans have not exactly been super high on Royce Newman. I think he's been struggling in the last couple of games that he got called in. Frankly, Runyon has, as much as I actually really like John Runyon Jr., but I think he's struggled a little bit as a run blocker all year, and yesterday was no exception. So the interior of that offensive line is where we're really struggling to get things going, in my opinion, in the run game. So might it be an opportunity to see what Sean Ryan can do? And not only from the perspective of just changing things up a little bit based on the performance that Royce Newman has given us the last 2 weeks, but also just on the fact that Royce Newman does have some experience playing tackle. So maybe he kind of slides into that backup emergency role where if he has to come in at a guard position in the interior, or if it really gets dire, he's able to come in and play tackle. And that's kind of the mindset that the Packers come into this week with. I know it's a short week and it's hard to make changes like that. But as I pointed out last week, on the depth chart, Sean Ryan technically is the backup left guard to Elton Jenkins. So it's just something to be looking out for. I don't know if you necessarily have any thoughts on that other than I'm just throwing that out there as maybe something that the Packers look to do and the coaching staff looks to do to try to shore up this run game a little bit this week against Detroit.
I hadn't even thought about it, if I'm being completely honest with you. But what I will say is offensively, especially along the line, we kind of know what we have in Royce Newman, don't we? I think we know who he is. I don't expect some major leap going forward with him. Somebody like Sean Ryan, his rookie year was, I hate to be critical, it was a disaster. He looked mismatched in camp his first season. He went in, got suspended some games, just nothing was clicking with Sean Ryan. I thought that his camp this year was incredibly impressive. He was winning his one-on-ones. He put on some really good tape in some of those preseason games. And despite his third round draft capital, Wags, he could have been a cut candidate. He really could have been after his first year, but he rebounded, he bounced back. And, I'd like to see Sean Ryan get some run, especially not if, of course, if everybody's healthy, that's a different story. But right now, we know we got in Royce Newman. We're not so sure with Sean Ryan. I agree. It's impossibly challenging in a short week. And perhaps we see it after the bye or even after this Thursday night with a little bit more extended time if Royce Newman struggles a little bit more again this week. But I wouldn't be surprised, I guess, if Elton Jenkins is out for an extended period of time, if Sean Ryan doesn't get an opportunity at some point here before even the mid-season point to show what he can do, because the Packers saw something in him and he has developed. I just wonder at what point. We don't see him in practice every day, but we've seen enough, I think, from him that it might warrant an opportunity for him to get some snaps in there. So something I hadn't thought about and probably doesn't happen in 2 days, but perhaps even after this break, this long week and they go into the Monday night game, the following week, that could be a time where we see Ryan on the road against Las Vegas getting his first NFL snaps. I just wouldn't be surprised to see it.
Yeah. So we'll wait and see. I know you don't ever want to read too much into preseason performances, but certainly Ryan was one of the guys that got some extended run in that preseason, and Emmanuel Wilson was finding lots of holes, not just behind him, but that offensive line that was out there in the preseason. So just something I thought we should consider and worth mentioning and looking out for. So Dane, we are coming up on close to an hour.
Of course we are. It's Lombardi's Legends podcast. We can't help ourselves.
So I think we've got a couple of things we want to do here. First of all, let's shift into our Leap Spirits, Be Legendary performances of the week. And so we want to highlight a couple of guys, both on the offense and defensive side of the ball. And then we're just going to seamlessly segue into our Leap Spirits X Factor and score prediction segment. So we'll try to make this efficient, but Dane, I'll let you kick this off. Who do you have as your first Be Legendary performer of the week as you look back against this nice win against the New Orleans Saints?
I'm going to start on offense, and I got to go with Jordan Love. He put the team on the back in the fourth quarter. Something that won't get talked about enough, Wags, was him using his legs, getting around the edge, and picking up a ton more yards, tiptoeing the sidelines. Love seeing him use his legs. It honestly reminded me of a young Aaron Rodgers, scrambling and doing just enough. And obviously some of the critical throws that he was able to make when it mattered most. Jordan Love is definitely by far on the offensive side my Leap Spirits. Big Cheese guy, player of week 3. Just a phenomenal fourth quarter performance from Jordan under pressure cooker.
Yeah, I will second that. I just got to give a shout out to Dobbs and Luke
Yeah.
Musgrave. I think certainly we're able to make some big time catches throughout the game and keep things moving a little bit offensively. So then Dane, shifting over to the defensive side of the ball. It's got to be Rashawn Gary, right? In this one, and I know he didn't get as many snaps as a lot of the other guys on defense, but based on what he did with those snaps, just huge impact. 3 sacks, just an amazing performance. So I think that's another no-brainer for the defensive side.
You said it all. Rashawn Gary's the man. He's definitely our leap spirits on defense this week. He was phenomenal.
Beautiful. All right, so let's shift into our Leap Spirits X Factors for Thursday night against Detroit. And Dane, I'm going to kick this off on the offensive side of the ball. And why break the tradition of what I said I was going to do? I did break it in week 2, but I'm just going to stick with it. I'm riding Jaden Reed as my offensive X Factor again this week. You saw this week. I mean, he was very, very close from having another just huge performance, not only in terms of potentially getting into the end zone a couple of times, but even with that, was able to get 3 catches for 63 yards, came up with a couple of big time catches, moved the sticks on 3rd down a couple of times. And in that last series, that diving catch was a thing of beauty. So just looking back, even in maybe a performance that I'm sure he feels like he missed a couple of opportunities. I think Jaden Reed is someone that is going to bounce back and having a little bit of a coming out party against the Detroit Lions on national television on Thursday night. And I'm excited to see him play every game the Packers are out there. But I think this could be set up for a big time X Factor performance this week for Jaden Reed.
Great choice, Wags. I'm going to go with Luke Musgrave as my Leap Spirits X Factor for week 4. And I'll tell you what, we talk about Detroit's tight end, right? Well, you know what? We talk about Detroit's guy. They should be scared of our guy. Luke Musgrave's going to tear him up. I really believe that. So, yeah, we're going to stay consistent. You're going to go with Reed. I'm going to go with Musgrave. It's like Groundhog's Day. Where's Bill Murray? But I love the matchup this week. I already mentioned it. Luke Musgrave, definitely my Leap Spirits X Factor on offense. And Wags, I want you to do the honors on defense. Who you got as your Leap Spirits X Factor on defense this week?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Rasul Douglas. I think this is a week that he gets another interception. He got an interception a couple weeks ago, but he's been just playing really solid football across the board. And so I think this is a big week for him because he's going to see a lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown, regardless of whether Jair can go. And this is a good Detroit wide receiver core. We talked about Laporta as well at tight end, and it seems like where we're lining Rasul up in the field and how they're rotating in, especially when they're in some of those zone looks, he's responsible for a lot of the outside middle coverages. And so I think he's going to have a big time performance this week. If he continues what he's doing in terms of his overall performance, I think that's a harbinger of good things for this Packer defense. But I think he's going to have the type of performance this week. If he can come up with an impact play or two, he's the type of guy that he's a true leader on this defense. We talked about this in training camp, and as he's emerged as kind of the leader of this defense in a lot of ways, not the only leader, but it's really been an incredible transformation. So I think a lot of guys feed off of Rasul Douglas. And so I know he's one of the better defensive players we have, but so calling him an X factor, I just think in terms of if he's able to raise his level of performance and come up with an impact play or two this week, that could really change the script of this game and gives an advantage to the Packers in this one.
It's a great choice, Wags. It is. I'm going to go with another guy who's definitely a guy on Leap Spirits X Factor. It's going to be Quay Walker. And the reason I say that, Devondre Campbell's out, the middle of the defense is his, right? So let's see what he can do this week. He's going to have his hands full. He's going to have to stop Gibbs. He's going to have to stop Laporte. He's going to have to stop whatever they throw at him, right? And he's probably going to be calling in some plays as well, working on alignments. There's a lot of the mental side of this game as well. They're going to be throwing at him. He's up to the task. So Quay Walker, having a really nice start to this year, Wags. And what more can I say? We're going to lean on him. We're going to rely on him. I think Walker is a star in the making for the Packers. And it's a big week when Devondre Campbell's not next to him, but he's going to take on a ton of snaps. And I expect him to flourish in this defense this week. And maybe he gets another pick. Why don't I throw it out there? I think that he's a game changer. So Quay Walker, my Leap Spirits X Factor this week.
I love it. All right, Dane, let's get into score predictions. I'm just going to throw this right out there. I got the Packers in this one, 23-20. This is going to be another close game. But I think the defense is going to come up with a couple takeaways in this game, and that's going to be the real difference in terms of the outcome of this game and the game flow. Packers can hang on. I think Detroit will make it interesting and keep it close. Certainly at the end, they're a really good football team. Quite honestly, though, Dane, I think this team is really rallying around each other. This is a we team and a wee locker room. I do not know that I've seen that to this level. And I know they were all saying the right things about Jordan Love, for example, coming into the season. But this last couple of weeks has not been the easiest in terms of some of the adversity that they faced situationally within these games. And somehow they keep picking themselves up off the floor and being there for each other as a team. And I really think that not only that, but the fact that Detroit came into Lambeau at the end of the season last year and won the game and knocked us out of the playoff contention, I think there's a lot of guys on this team right now that are really doing this together as a team. And I think they're really going to be really psyched up to try to get some revenge on Detroit for what happened last season, not only at the end of the season, but the fact that they got knocked out by the Lions both games last season. I think this is a really big opportunity on national television, and I think this young team is going to come in ready to play, and I really hope they do. And but I do expect that they're going to be putting all the chips out to try to win this one.
I love it. I really like that prediction. I really do. I got the Packers putting up 31 against Detroit, 31-24. Wow. I think the Packers found something out late in the game yesterday. They spread out the Saints a little bit more, and they got some stuff cooking. They like their matchups. I think that they like their young receivers against a lot of the depth of defense in this league. I think that the Packers 3 and 4 receivers, whether Christian Watson's out there or not, we can match up against Detroit. Yeah, they're inexperienced, but boy, oh boy, they're talented. So I think Jordan Love's going to let that ball sling around some more. And I don't think he's going to shrink in these big moments because we've seen him so far, and he doesn't shrink, Wags. And I want to see him get out there and sling that ball, stretch the field, make some big throws. I think Aaron Jones does come back this week. I think we get the run game going better than we have all season long so far. I'm not saying it's a 100+ yard performance, but I think it's enough to keep the chains moving. And that's going to allow for Jordan Love to sit back there in the pocket and make some big throws. So Detroit's a good team. I don't care. I think the Packers are a good team. And I think Jordan Love's going to put on a big time performance under the big lights at Lambeau Field. So 31-24, Packers are going to win this football game.
I love it, Dan. I love it. And especially if we can get a couple turnovers, why not get some additional points? It's hard to know how good is this Detroit defense. They looked pretty good in week 1 against the Chiefs. Granted, that was without Travis Kelce, but still, that's the Chiefs. Didn't look all that great in week 2. The Seahawks put up a bunch of yards and points. And then yesterday against the Falcons team that I think, say what you will, obviously the Packers weren't able to put them away is a solid team. They're not terrible, but held them to 6 points and really shut down their strength in the run game. So I think we'll have to be prepared for this to be a tough game, but Dane, I love your optimism, and obviously I predict Packers win too. So hopefully we're able to come away with some takeaways in this game, and that can tilt the scoreboard as well. So,
and Wags, we got some comments. John got the Packers 40-20. I love it. Pack winning. And our boy Kevin's got, he says 100% agree on the we team. Post-game interviews just sound different this year. It's all about us and we. Pretty neat. It echoes what you said. And yeah, there's something different going on here. This is a young team that believes in each other. And, like LaFleur, don't like LaFleur. I know folks have all their opinions of Coach LaFleur. I think he's the right coach for this team. He's a leader of men, and I think these young men are rallying around him and this quarterback, and I'm so excited to see this team continue to grow this year. So couldn't agree more.
All right, beautiful. Well, folks, thanks so much for joining us live tonight, or if you're listening to this either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, leading up to the game against Detroit on Thursday Night Football. As always, be legendary and go Pack go.
Pack go.
Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go Pack go. Ain't showing no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck.